All right, guys, welcome back to the shack. I think recovery is coming. A little more mobility today, so it took me to about lunch to muster up the strength. But I'm out here in the shack today, and I was using the xTool S1 a little more. And I know a lot of you guys know that I use jigs for everything, and that was one of my concerns with the S1. Is did xTool mess up and ruin a good machine? But is this going to be better? And I try to be open to new things, and you know, change is not something that most of us like. So I'm sitting out here today just testing to see how accurate I can jig things out with using this machine, using the 2-point triangulation system that it uses. So that's what I'm going to be going over today. I'm going to demonstrate to you how to go about doing it, how to make the jig files, and how to replace the jig file every time to get consistent results without having to frame everything out every time. So if that's something that you think you might be interested in, stick around and we're going to get to it. All right, so we'll start off, guys, with just a piece of, this is my 4.5 millimeter Luan. And I'm just going to throw that over in the workspace. And I've created a file. I was trying to keep the video from being too god-awfully long. So I've created a file, and I'm going to move you over to XCS, which is what I'm going to be using, you know, for the first week or two of this machine. And we're going to set this file up and build a jig using XCS, which would be the software that the machine comes with. So let me swap you over to the screen and let's get started. All right, so as you can see, I've already got XCS up. I've already done this a couple of times, like I said, guys, just to make sure that the system that I thought I could use would actually work. And there's two parts to using a jig. The first part to using a jig, of course, is building that jig file and having that jig file be consistent. Well, the second part is you have to have a known reference point on this file to use it and to use it accurately. So what I've done here is I've created the file, and it's just a square that I've got set to a cut. This green line right here is actually the material, the way that the machine thinks the material is currently, which it's wrong, but we're going to adjust that to cut this out. So I'm going to turn around here and adjust my material so that we can start the marking process. So you got to hit the start marking button here, and then everything else will be over at the machine. So let me spin around. All right, so this is a pretty good sized piece of material. So what I'm going to do is take the laser head, using the crosshairs, go all the way to the back. This material is actually bigger than the work area, so I'm just going to mark as far back as I can go. And then I'm going to bring it back over here to the front of the workspace, to the farthest corner of the material, and I'm going to mark there. Now, this particular goal now, guys, is for us to cut this shape with those index cards there out. And I don't know why I wasn't showing you the screen, but bear with me, guys. But the goal is going to be to cut out this inner shape right here and these small pockets. I've got this. These should be set to, no, those are actually set to output because I did do this. I'm just going to remove those completely. That way we don't have those in the way. And so we're just going to cut this outer shape and these interior holes here, which are going to be for our cards to sit in. I haven't set the distance on the material yet. Still got it at 13.6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the machine up and over until it's on the material. And you can tell where the crosshair is by that. Once it gets on the material, I'll hit the auto measure and it'll measure itself. Once it takes that measurement, it's going to go over and it's going to reset the pin. Now, on my screen, because I did that, it's saying that the marking process may have changed. So I know that it hasn't because I didn't move anything other than to do the focus. So I'm just going to leave that alone and go ahead and process this. Now, like I said, this is all we're doing. We're cutting out a square with the pockets and a little bit of text right there. So hit the start. Once I get ready to engrave, I hit the button and it's off to the races, guys. It's going to write the text and then it'll cut out all the shapes and we'll have us a jig panel ready to get started. All right, guys, so the file cut out, and that's what we wound up with. Now, I will tell you this, to make life easier on yourself, I used 1/4 inch material for this, but I cut one earlier just testing the practice out of 1/8 inch material. Well, you can either reuse these that came out of the holes of your jig by sanding them down and making them recess into the material, or you can use the pieces from a thinner material. And what you're going to want to do is take your jig kit, and I'll hang on to these in case we want to use those for some testing. Take your panel, and I got some frog tape here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take and put frog tape across the panel from side to side, right there where the inserts go. All right. And the reason I'm doing this, guys, is it makes it easier to remove the cards and stuff, and you don't have a problem with them falling down underneath the jig, between the jig and the work surface, your honeycomb or whatever. So I'm just going to run this tape across and get that done. And I'm just going to make sure it's good and secured to the board all the way across in these little areas where these tabs are. Take my handy little razor knife, and then I'm just going to run down through here and trim off the extra. That way I don't have a big bunch of tape in the way. So now, this is what I got. So I'm going to take my little 1/8 inch pieces of wood, and I'm going to put them, because I used the same file that I created to cut this one, to cut these 1/8 inch ones. So I'm going to set them down in those holes. And all I want them to be in there for is to keep my card from falling all the way through, and act as a spacer of sorts, so that the card is not recessed down inside the jig as bad. So that's all I'm doing with these. And like I said, you can do it out of thinner material. You can even cut these out of cardboard or something like that. Just some cheap material to keep from having to, cut another piece of wood. If you wanted to use like cardboard, you had a delivery box sitting around and you just wanted to recycle that cardboard, you can make these little inserts out of that cardboard or any other material for that matter. So once I got all those in there, just gonna make sure my tape's nice and tight against those guys to hold them in place. It doesn't have to be rugged. I just need it to hold them in place when I'm moving it from place to place. So now we've got our jig file made, guys. So there's a few things on the computer at this point that we're gonna have to do in order to be able to reuse this file to print 9 cards on this little template right here. So we'll move you back to the computer and we'll go over the steps that are needed next to be able to turn this file into a jig file. All right, back in XCS. So now, guys, basically all of the graphics on this design right here need to be set to ignore. You don't want any of these graphics right here. You don't want any of them outputting from this point forward. These are basically going to be used as a frame to utilize to line everything up. You do, however, want to keep all of these together. I would strongly recommend just go ahead and group them so that they can't be moved. And then, of course, you're going to want to save this file. Save as. I've already saved it one time, but I'm going to go back. Card jig is what I'm going to save it as an XCS project, and hit save. And then, of course, I'm just going to replace it. So now, guys, we've got our file built. So I'm going to exit out of XCS to show you how this would work if you were trying to do some cards. I'm going to exit out of XCS. All right. Relaunch XCS. This is where this little 2-point system that they're using is actually pretty good for this. I was a little shocked. All right, so I've got XCS open. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put my little card jig in there. And I've got mine set up. Let me show you over here on the machine. I've got mine set up. I like about 3 right here on the ruler on the honeycomb. And guys, the reason I'm saying that is if you get too close to the edge with your jigs, you're limited by your speed because you have that over travel that you have to account for. So I use the little ruler on my honeycomb, and I'll slide the corner of this over to about 3 right there. It puts it kind of in the middle. I have secured my honeycomb to the bed using these little 3D printed clamps that I made. You can secure yours however, or you don't have to secure it. You just want to make sure it's not going to be moving while you're running the job. And so I'm going to put these nice little magnets that xTool sent me with the machine. They work really well. I'm going to put 4 of these guys on here. Try to avoid putting a magnet in this corner and that corner up there, because you're going to need to reference those corners with this system in order to make sure everything where it needs to be. So see, by my honeycomb being secured, this can't move. So that's there, that's where it needs to be. So now for the next step, which is going to be to mark the area. Even though I don't have to, it's going to make me do the z-axis first. So let me go ahead and do that. I got to find a place on the material that's not going to fall into the jig. All right, looks like a good spot. All right, so now we're going to start marking. So here I go. Over to the machine. All right, so on this part, guys, what you're going to do is you're going to mark the back left corner of this panel that we just burned. All right. Get the crosshairs as close to the edge as you can. What I like to do is have it to where the whole beam is on the material, but no more. That way I can see the whole beam. And then you're going to hit the button. All right. Same thing for this corner over here. Come over here, line it up. Basically, I've got the full width of the beam on the material with no more. I'm going to hit the button again. So now let's go back over to the computer. So it's captured those 2 vertices, and what we're going to do now is just hit done, and it's going to populate an area that it believes to be our material onto the workspace. So now we need to bring in our file that we made, which is going to be this card jig. So I'm just going to bring that into XCS. It cleared my little marks, so we're going to have to remark. All right, so once I bring that into XCS, I don't know why it cleared that, but anyway, let's redo the marks. So redoing this again. Lesson learned, it will clear your marking if you open a file. So marking that one. Marking that one. All right, so we got it recorded again. Once we do that, guys, this is the file, this blue line is the file that we use to cut this green file. So we know that it's the exact same shape. All you got to do to line this up to where you can use this jig to cut stuff is drag this line, this blue line, close to centered on this green line as you can possibly get it. And voila, you're ready to go. Now you have your jig set up for the cards that you can place the cards in here. You can just insert the graphics, use these little boxes for centering, and make some cards. So we'll load up a couple of cards here and demonstrate. So I'm just going to bring in, we'll bring in the flag here. How about that? And I'm going to set this guy right here to engrave anodized business card. So I'll put one top left, and you can see it's kind of like snapping to the center for me, so that's kind of useful. Then on copy, I'll put another one in the center just to scatter them out and show you that this really does work. It's only about right there. So once you get those where you want them, then you got to go over, of course, and load your blanks. And I'm doing top left and middle. So we move the head out of the way. We'll put me one here at the top left. And put me another one here in the middle. Actually, that's 2 of them. Huh. So I'll put another one in the bottom real well. This is about all marked up. So we'll just do the 2. So I've got those 2 in there, guys. And now comes the magic. So here we go. Let's go back over to the screen for a second. All right, so I've got those in there. Both of those, and I'm just going to click on them and make sure, because me and XCS have not been agreeing on some of the settings. When I set something, it wants to change it, it seems like. So I'm trying to work through that. So I'm going to check on these. Let me do both of them. Come on. All right, and both of those are set to output, engrave, 600 millimeters a second, 50% power. All right, so we're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and hit process on this guy. It's going to pop the screen up, preparing the preview. As you can see, nothing is going to burn except for those 2 cards, and it should burn them where they are. So I'm going to hit start. You got to close the lid. It won't let you start until you close the lid. Close the lid. All right, I had to process again and with the lid closed. So there we go. This is going to burn these 2 cards in that jig. It'll be the top left card as well as the center one. So we'll let that run and be right back. All right, guys, so the cards turned out well, and as you can see, orange cards, clear background. It's not a real good contrast, but I keep these guys around for testing. And guys, you can now, no matter where in the workspace I position this jig, the only concern really that you're going to have is you're going to need to make sure that it is square. Now, I'm doing that by, I've attached my honeycomb to the bottom of the machine using those little clamps, and I've made sure using the laser that is square with the laser. You can just square the laser, or square the honeycomb up, or square the item before you do it, run a job, and take it out. You don't have to necessarily secure your honeycomb to the machine. However, for what I'm going to be using the machine for, it saves me a lot of trouble because I know that the honeycomb is square, and I know that I placed that jig along the edge of that honeycomb. It's going to keep it square. And I also know that with this file, if I open it up and I have my jig kit right here set it like, got it set at 3 inches there, I know that the file is going to be mostly lined up for me. So that's where the benefit of having knowns comes into play, is that you know where everything's going to be, and that's how you can consistently batch out products using a jig system. And not having the camera with the xTool, I thought was going to be a big deal. I thought that was going to limit me from what I could do with jigs, but it actually works really, really well for that. Like I said, I wish they had secured the honeycomb somewhere, somehow, maybe put some pins in it and through the bottom so that you could, you know, pull the pin to take the honeycomb out, but when the pins were in, the honeycomb would stay square with everything. That would be really nice. I had thought about doing that, but I didn't want to drill holes through the bottom of the machine and through the honeycomb to do it, so I just made these little brackets and used some little sheet metal screws around the edge, and it holds it down and keeps it in place for me. But like I said, you don't have to do that. You can actually square everything when you get ready to set it up for work. You can square it using the laser. But remember, if anything gets moved, it's going to create discrepancies in the file from one use to the other. But that's the gist of it, guys. You can go back and watch some of my other videos about how to create your own jigs. But you can do it with the S1 without having the ability of using a camera. That was something that, like I said, I was concerned with at first. I thought xTool had dropped the ball, but after using this system and doing it a few times, I think they've done pretty good. I can say that not having the camera is not going to handicap me when it comes to making jigs. So if you were wondering about it and wondering how I was going to work around it, this is how I'm going to work around it, guys. Build files, make the jigs, use the 2-point coordinates to line them up, and you're golden. So there it is. Y'all had asked me about being able to do jigs with the machine and how well it would work for batching out large quantities of things. And my answer is, using this approach, it works really well. Like I said, secure that honeycomb. That makes it a little easier, but if you choose not to do that, then you're just going to do a little bit more alignment on the front end. But I'm going to keep testing the machine, guys. Plan on doing a few more tutorials and a few more how-tos in XCS before I move over to Lightburn. And then I'm going to run through some videos with Lightburn as well. Some of the capabilities you have with XCS, you're going to lose them going over to Lightburn currently. So that's one reason I'm trying to stay at XCS to where I can see what the machine's full potential is and appreciate it before I go over to Lightburn. That way I can kind of compare, which software I would prefer for this particular machine. But all in all, guys, still enjoying the machine, still doing a really good job. I cleaned it yesterday, and it's cutting great, running fine today, and I have ran this thing quite a bit, considering how much most people are going to run a machine. So it's held up really well. But don't forget, if you're interested in a machine, guys, look down below, click those links. Those are affiliate links, and it does get me a little bit of a bump, a little payback here for the Clack Shack to help with production costs and materials and whatnot. So if you're interested, like I said, grab one of those links and go pick yourself up one, put it on order. But so far, I haven't found any major issues with the machine, but you're seeing what it's capable of right here, guys. So stay tuned and hit that subscribe button if you hadn't already, and notifications. That way, the next S1 video comes out, you'll get a notification and you can come catch that. So till next time, guys, be safe. Have a good day.